Coming in at number 5, Rosemary's Baby. Roman Polanski's masterpiece, Rosemary's Baby, set the standard for many cultist horror movies, particularly in the way it reveals the cult, using a steady and slow build and paranoia, confusing us as to what exactly is even happening. This 1968 horror stars Mia Farrow and chronicles the story of a pregnant woman who suspects that an evil cult wants to take her baby for use in their rituals. However, it is quickly revealed that her husband has made a deal with the devil for success in his acting career, and the price is offering up his wife as a surrogate mother for something truly evil: Satan's son. That's right, the cult uses Rosemary as a sacrificial lamb for Satan's grand return through his own offspring, and it is truly terrifying. The general sense of unease throughout the movie is why Rosemary's Baby is an absolute classic, and perhaps one of the scarier movies in the horror genre. The horrors depicted on and off the screen aided in the rumour that the film was actually cursed by the cult and summoned demons, with many incidents occurring off-screen to the cast and crew, including the slaying of Roman Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, at the hands of the Manson family. Coming in at number 4, VHS 2, Safe Haven. Safe Haven is one of 4 sections in the 2013 anthology found footage sequel VHS 2, with the segment being directed by Timo Tjahjanto and Gareth Hugh Evans, and being the best section in the entirety of the movie. The plot follows a news crew composed of 4 members, who infiltrate an Indonesian cult in the hopes of shooting a documentary about their mysterious activities. Inside the building, they find the walls adorned in bizarre symbols, school children in classrooms, and women dressed in white garments. One of the crew, Malik, then overhears that his fiancée Lena is pregnant with another crew member's child, Adam. Things then descend into total madness. The deeper the crew go inside the building, with Lena being abducted by several women, with the cult hunting down the crew members for sacrificial reasons. Now, with only 29 minutes to play with, Evans and Tjahjanto don't hold back, not even for a second, with the segment being insanely action-packed and gore-filled from start to finish. Not to mention it builds to an insane, gore-soaked climax that will shock the audience. The cult are successful in their demon summoning, with the beast making its grand appearance towards the final moments of the movie, and it does not disappoint. Coming in at number 3, we have Children of the Corn. Children in horror movies are already creepy, but put them in a cult composed solely of children, then you have a recipe for absolutely terrifying scares. Children of the Corn, based on the book of the same name by Stephen King, is a supernatural folk horror starring Linda Hamilton and Peter Horton, and is set in a fictitious rural town of Gatlin, Nebraska. The film tells the story of a malevolent entity referred to as He Who Walks Behind the Rose, which entices the town's children to ritually murder all the town's adults and a couple driving across the country to ensure a successful corn harvest. As the couple arrive in the small, seemingly abandoned town, they discover the congregation of children led by a girl named Rachel, with them performing a cultural birthday ritual for Amos by drinking his blood from a pentagram-shaped cut on his body. Amos has turned 19, therefore is considered old enough for his passing, joining their god in the cornfield. Now, while the movie as a whole was a little disappointing, it does deliver on the horrors of cults. Not to mention there were 7 sequels, with the first being far superior. The cult movie in turn gained a cult following, with it being a hit among movie lovers. Coming in at number 2, we have Hereditary. One of 2 Ari Aster movies on our list, Hereditary was a surprise horror movie, with the reveal of its cult being kept a secret for much of the movie, making it incredibly unexpected when it begins to unfold. Released in 2018, Hereditary is Ari Aster's directorial debut, with it starring Toni Collette and Alex Wolff as a family haunted by a mysterious presence after the death of their secretive grandmother. However, what begins as a sober family drama very quickly descends into a crazy supernatural horror. What begins as a slow burn quickly catapults into a disturbing horror after an incident involving the family's son and daughter, leaving viewers covering their mouths. As a result of the incident, the mother, Annie, is forced to turn to a support group member, Jones, for support, learning ways she can contact the realm of the supernatural. However, this has devastating consequences, with her awakening something that should never have been awoken. Viewers very quickly learn that a demon-worshipping cult are the true causes of the family's misery and pain. Worse still, Ari Aster plants Easter eggs throughout the movie as a way of warning us of things to come. However, saying that, most of us may have missed these subliminal messages, but what I can say is, the wall-crawling demon was revealed long before the last 30 minutes of the movie, with the cult being there all along, watching the family and waiting for their moment. The cult in Hereditary are worshippers of Paimon, one of Lucifer's most obedient devotees, who rules 200 legions of angels, and is connected to the Tree of Death, hence why the treehouse in Hereditary is so important. The summoning of Paimon is gradual throughout the movie, but when he finally arrives and seeks solace in the body of one of the characters, well, it's enough to send shivers down anyone's spine. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Midsommar. There are a few things more terrifying than a cult in horror movies, a group of people devoted to a dark higher power who will do absolutely anything to appease the deity. No movie displays this as effectively as Ari Aster's Midsommar. Released in 2019, Midsommar is a folk horror film starring my queen, Florence Pugh, and follows a group of friends who travel to Sweden for a festival that occurs once every 90 years, only to find themselves in the clutches of a pagan cult. Now, unlike Ari Aster's Hereditary, Midsommar lays out its intentions from the very start of the movie. The movie kicks off with Dani discovering the death of both her sister and parents, with the incident putting a strain on Dani's relationship with her already distant boyfriend Christian. Not long after, she learns that Christian has planned a trip to Sweden with his friends to attend a midsummer celebration at an ancestral commune, so the group packs up and heads out. Things very quickly descend into madness, with the group arriving and being met by a large group of white cult members in a very peculiar white outfit, with Dani realizing that something isn't quite right here. However, her concerns are proven correct when 2 commune elders die by senicide via leaping from a cliff top. When the male elder survives the fall, the cult mimics his wails of agony and crushes his skull with a mallet. Yeah, things aren't fun in Sweden right now. Now, without ruining much more for those who haven't watched it yet, the cult does what is necessary to summon the dark higher power that they worship, with the American tourist being used as a sacrifice for the demon. Now, more interesting still, while this movie isn't entirely based on a real cult, director Ari Aster does describe it as a stew of sorts. I quote, "We're drawing from actual Swedish traditions. We're drawing from Swedish folklore. We're drawing from Norse mythology." All in all, Midsommar successfully draws on the disturbing conventions of cultist horror to generate a sense of dread and unease, making it my favourite folk horror movie and cult horror movie of all time.
Number 5 on this list is the Red Book Ritual, or also called the Game of the Red Book. This is another one of our classic rituals where we're going to be contacting a spirit to answer questions and potentially tell us the future. The ritual originated in Mexico and has been part of local Mexican lore for years. As we've seen throughout this series of demonic rituals you should never perform, whenever you contact a spirit, whatever the method, there are consequences. The Game of the Red Book is no different. To perform this ritual, you'll need a red hardcover book that you've never read with no pictures in it. At least one candle to light whatever room you choose to perform your ritual, and at least one other person to perform that ritual with. Head into your room with your partner or group of people that you're going to be doing this with, and sit either across from one another or in a circle surrounding the book. Light your candle and have it be the only light in the room. Whoever wants to go first, grab the book, place your palm on the cover of it, and say, "Red Book, can I enter your game?" Then, with your eyes closed, flip to a part of the book and put your finger on that page. Open your eyes and read the sentence. If this is a positive sentence, something you'll need to interpret, then you can play the game. If it's a negative sentence, then you're either not permitted to play or you're going to need to try again. Assuming that it's positive, you can now ask a different question to the red book. Repeat the process that you just did, and the spirit on the other side should guide your finger to a sentence in the book that will answer your question. This ritual doesn't seem too dangerous, however there have been stories of people going missing after this game, or the red book not allowing you to stop playing the game, and if you try to leave, bringing on dire consequences. Number 4 on this list is the picture game. This is a demonic ritual where the goal is to capture a ghost or a demon on camera. For this to work, you're going to need a wide array of unique items. Some string long enough to make a circle out of it, scissors, a small mirror for you and every person who intends to partake in this ritual, a camera with a flash, but it can't be a phone, it's got to be an actual camera, a glass to drink out of, some wine, and a quiet room. Once you have all of these things in place, you and the others doing this will want to start at midnight. Tie your string into a circle and place it in the center of your room. Put your glass in the center of it and fill it with the wine that you brought. Have everybody sit around the circle and place your mirror in front of yourself facing up towards the ceiling. Now that you're in position, grab each other's hands and go around the circle one by one saying, "I trust you." After you've done this once, you can grab your camera. Now one by one, take that camera and point it into the middle of the circle and say, "I caught you," right as you take a picture. The entire group should do this individually 3 times so that everybody has taken 3 pictures. Don't look at the pictures after you've taken them, just keep going around the circle. Now after everybody's done this 3 times, you once again need to go down the circle and say, "It's time to go home." Once everybody's done this, grab your scissors and cut open the string circle. Take the wine outside and dump it onto a patch of earth. This action ultimately ends the ritual. When everything is done, you can look at your pictures now, and it's said that if you're lucky, you will have caught a ghost or a demon in one or a few of them. All of this seems pretty tame, but there are some risks involved, of course. During the process of the ceremony, there have been reports of people in the circle getting hysterical. So much so that they start crying and losing their minds as if they've been taken over by someone else. This can be excruciatingly painful as well, with reports of people clawing themselves until they start to bleed. If you do manage to get through the ritual without a hitch, then you could come out with a cool photo, but it may not be worth it. Number 3 on this list is the Ouija board. I haven't put the Ouija board on a previous list yet because I imagine you're all decently familiar with it, but considering we're on part 4, I think it's time to bring it up. The Ouija board was patented in 1891 and has been a staple in ghost stories for the 125 years that it's been in existence. The Ouija board, or the spirit board as some like to call it, has been paraded as a tool that can be used to contact the dead and speak with spirits. This board was initially made by Hasbro as a toy for kids, but many people nowadays associate it with the work of the devil. Using a Ouija board is quite simple, honestly. The board is typically structured where it has the words yes and no in the top corners. It has the words goodbye at the bottom of the board, and in the middle of it there's the entire alphabet along with the numbers 0 through 9. The board will also come with a planchette, and this is what you'll be using to spell out the answers to your questions. Get at least one other friend and place your hands on this device. Then begin asking simple questions to the board. You'll notice that the board will begin to respond and the planchette will start to move, even though you'll not be initiating the movement yourself. If this does happen, then you have now contacted a demon or a spirit. The problem with this board is that many people try and contact specific individuals, and it truly isn't that simple. A Ouija board is really like a scary dice roll. You may get lucky and contact the spirit of your grandmother who had passed, or you may get unlucky and contact a demon. The amount of stories associated with a Ouija board where things have gone wrong is truly endless. In fact, I made an entire video about it on this channel, top 5 scary demonic messages from a Ouija board. If you want to hear specifics on how crazy this thing can get, then definitely go and check that out. But my recommendation in that video and in this one is to never use one yourself. Number 2 on this list is the Dream of the Dead. The Dream of the Dead is a ritual performed by yourself as a means to hear what the dead have to say. This ritual is a little sneaky. It can only be performed on Halloween, so if you want to do it, then you're going to have to wait a whole nother year to try. To do this, you'll need 4 candles and something to light them with. Salt, an alarm clock, a picture of the person you want to connect with, and a safe place to sleep. You'll want to start setting up your room at around 9 p.m. on Halloween night. Clear the room of any electronics and make space on the floor. Spread your salt in a circle on the ground of the area you want to sleep. If you're sleeping in a bed, then make the circle around the bed. Place the picture you have beneath the pillow that you're going to use. Light your candles in a separate part of the room in a rectangle big enough for you to sit inside. Now that everything is set, you can begin. Go to your rectangle of candles and place yourself inside of it. Close your eyes and think about a group of people that are dead that are now surrounding you. Think about this image and say the words, "On this night of nights, I call the gatekeeper, divider of the realm of the living and the dead, and I demand communion with the peaceful dead." Now, go to your bed and sleep. Once you fall asleep, you should see the person whose picture is beneath your pillow. They will appear in your dream and speak to you. Don't speak back, just listen to what they have to say. The problem with this ritual is that sometimes it isn't that person who you intended, kind of similarly to the Ouija board. People have also reported feeling trapped in this dream, like it's never ending and their whole lives are being spent in this dream, or at least that's what it feels like to them. I think hearing from the dead could be cool, but I personally would not want to risk a harrowing experience with a demon in my dreams. Number 1 on this list is Sarah Sarita. Sarah Sarita is a ritual that originated in Spain and is used as a method of gaining information from a dead spirit. Whomst Sarah Sarita is somewhat up in the air. Now, some people believe that Sarah Sarita is one person and that she's the daughter of Lucifer. Others believe that Sarah and Sarita are 2 different people, sisters that were brutally murdered and now play this game with the living. Whether it be the daughter of Lucifer or 2 dead girls, you will be dealing with demon spirits, and that can always go wrong. To perform this ritual, you're gonna need one other friend. You also need 2 standard coins. Now, do not try to rig the coins so they're weighted, or you'll be killed. You and your friend can start at any time of the day. You just need to sit on the ground of whatever area you've chosen and say in unison, "Sarah Sarita, may I enter your game?" Then, simultaneously, flip your coins. If both land heads up, then you can continue going. If both land tails up, then you stop immediately and do not proceed. If one is heads and one is tails, then it's said that you can continue, but do so with caution. Assuming you got both heads up, then proceed by asking Sarah Sarita some yes or no questions. You need to go one by one, and you should never speak over yourselves. Ask her a yes or no question, and then both flip your coins. The same logic follows as before. Heads is a yes, tails are a no, and if they differ, then it's a maybe. When you've had enough, you must ask Sarah Sarita, may I leave your game? Then flip your coins and continue to ask this question until you get heads. Leaving early, that's a big no-no, so don't do that. The ritual here isn't too dangerous, but it's what has happened after this ritual. People have reported getting haunted by some sort of demon figure following this game, or hearing voices in their heads that won't go away. Sarah Sarita, whoever it is assuredly a demon, and they're not to be trusted. Well, there you have it, guys. That is our list of the top 5 demonic rituals you should never perform. Part 4.
Coming in at number 5, Gather the Daughters by Jenny Melamed. Jenny Melamed's debut novel, Gather the Daughters, transports readers to a post-apocalyptic colony ruled by tyrannical men. The futuristic community is shaped by sexism, censorship, and government-mandated procreation. The book has been compared to The Handmaid's Tale due to its depiction of female servitude. Now, as the novel's heroines come of age, they are confronted with depravity of the colony's traditions, and thanks to specific occurrences, a rebellion is sparked. Now, unlike The Handmaid's Tale, we're given very little information about life beyond the island the cult is residing on, with Melamed keeping us in the dark and just as frustrated as her characters. It's a captivating novel that inspires but at times sickens, but is mostly a meditation on the dangers of misogyny and fear. In at number 4, Underground, The Tokyo Gas Attack and the Japanese Psyche by Haruki Murakami. Published between 1997 and 1998, Underground is a book by Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami about the 1995 Aum Shinriko sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway. The attack was an act of domestic terrorism perpetrated on 20th of March 1995 by members of the cult movement Aum Shinriko. In 5 coordinated attacks, the cult members released sarin on 3 lines of the Tokyo Metro during rush hour, killing 13 people, severely injuring 50, and causing temporary vision problems for nearly 1,000 others. The cult, which was led by Shoko Asahara, had already carried out several other assassinations and terror attacks using sarin, and had also produced several other nerve agents including VX, and attempted to produce botulinum toxin. In the raid that followed the attack, police arrested many senior members of the cult, with over 200 members being arrested. To this day, the attack remains the deadliest terror attack in Japan. Now, Murakami's novel is made up of a series of interviews with individuals who were affected by the attacks, and the English translation also includes interviews with members of Aum, the religious cult responsible for the attacks. In the novel, he attempts to make sense of the horrific attacks, and in turn is a true testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Coming in at 3, The Shelter Cycle by Peter Rock. Inspired by true events, The Shelter Cycle, written by Peter Rock, tells the story of 2 children, Francine and Colville, who grew up in the church university universal and triumphant, a religion that predicted the world would come to an end in the late 1980s. While their parents built underground shelters to withstand the impending Soviet missile strike, Francine and Colville played in the Montana wilderness where invisible spirits watched over them. However, when the apocalypse does not occur, the sect's members are forced to resurface and grow up in a world they believed might no longer exist. Now, the depiction of the cult is harrowing, but what makes the book more unsettling is the depiction of someone who has survived it. Someone who, having lost his rudder, might be capable of absolutely anything. Now, as outsiders, we believe that when people escape a cult, they are safe, right? However, Peter Rock turns this on its head and examines how cults continue to live inside of us, evolving and changing over time. Coming in at 2, The Girls by Emma Cline. The Girls is a 2016 debut novel by Emma Cline and is loosely inspired by the Manson family and the murder of actress Sharon Tate. The novel itself is set in 1969 and focuses on 14-year-old Evie Boyd, who feels isolated and unloved and ends up spending the majority of that summer with a group of teenage girls on a ranch who are all devoted to a man named Russell. Now, the novel never explicitly states that it's talking about the Manson murders, but it's obvious to almost everyone who reads it. Cline also gives intimate insight into adolescence, desire, and the grotesque lengths some are willing to go in order to feel like they belong. Now, for those who don't know, the Manson family was a desert commune and cult led by Charles Manson that was active in California in the late 1960s and early 70s. The group consisted of 100 of his followers who lived an unconventional lifestyle with habitual use of hallucinogenic drugs. Now, on the evening of August 8, 1969, 4 members of the Manson family invaded the home of actress Sharon Tate and movie director Roman Polanski and murdered Tate, who was almost 9 months pregnant at the time, along with 3 friends who were visiting and an 18-year-old visitor who was slain as he was leaving the home. The Manson family were brutal and absolutely abhorrent, so if you want to read a fictional depiction of the group, check out The Girls. And finally, coming in at number 1, Jonestown and Other Madness by Pat Parker. Now, backstory before we get into the meat of the book by Pat Parker. On November 18th, 1978, a total of nearly 918 people died in a settlement at the nearby airstrip in Port Kaituma and at a temple-run building in Georgetown. Now, the People's Temple Agricultural Project, better known by its informal name, Jonestown, was a remote settlement established by the People's Temple, a cult under the leadership of Jim Jones. In total, around 909 individuals died in Jonestown, all but 2 from apparent cyanide poisoning in an event that has been referred to as a revolutionary suicide by Jones and some of his cult. Now, let's track back. Jones had founded what became the People's Temple in Indiana in the 1950s, then relocated his congregation to California in the 60s. In the 70s, however, following negative media attention, the preacher moved with around 1,000 of his followers to the Guineas jungle, where he promised a utopian community. That is not what they received, because as aforementioned, on the day of November 18th, 1978, US Representative Leo Ryan, who had gone to Jonestown to investigate claims of abuse, was murdered along with 4 members of his delegation by Jonestown gunmen. That very same day, Jones ordered his followers to ingest poison-laced punch, while armed guards watched on. Now, in the book Jonestown and Other Madness by Pat Parker, she examines the rise and fall of the charismatic turned murderous preacher Jim Jones. As a celebrated lesbian feminist poet, Pat Parker's collection is a gripping reflection on the way race, class, and gender played into Jim Jones's sadistic slaughter of his congregation. Throughout the book, she challenges us to reflect on how easily we accept answers given to us in the wake of a tragedy. I quote, "If 900 white people had gone to a country with a black minister and committed suicide, would we have accepted the answer we were given so easily?" The book is fantastic and incredibly moving. Not just that, but it's also the perfect insight into one of the most notorious cults and infamous massacres.
Kicking off at number 5, Children of the Corn, 1984.
He wants you too, Malachi.
Which is perhaps everyone's first horror brush with the concept of a strange fanatical cult of demonic, corn-zealous children out in the deep rural fields of Nebraska, which is oddly specific, but Children of the Corn is also iconic for a reason. See, the thing is though, despite some terrible acting and questionable special effects, this film worked at the time and still works to this day because of its concept. It's like Lord of the Flies meets The Omen. What if the children of a small rural town were corrupted by a demonic overlord? Children of the Corn is the answer to that question. question. Directed by Fritz Kirsch and written by George Goldsmith, the movie itself is based on the short story of the same name by Stephen King, and admittedly, it takes many liberties with King's narrative structure. But, and this is a big but, it's hard not to produce a cult classic 80s slasher when you have the basic recipe of the real core of this film. Creepy kids in wide-brimmed hats wielding scythes and staring out from behind the rows of corn, seeking more adults to slay to sacrifice to their aptly Kingian bloodthirsty deity. In fact, it's hard not to go wrong, especially when you have the incredibly unnerving performance from the then child actor John Franklin as the genuinely unsettling Isaac Kroner. Oh, and of course a direct reference to He Who Walks Behind the Rose, aka Randall Flagg himself. Like many of Stephen King's fictional works, Children of the Corn is a cautionary tale on the dangers of delusion and organised corruption, and that's why it's so damn good. Next up at number 4, The Ritual, 2017. And whilst that scene was absolutely hilarious in an otherwise horrifying movie, it doesn't water down the fact that the bizarre Jotun cult in 2017's The Ritual is one of the most original and downright disconcerting depictions of a fanatical band of sacrificial followers in recent times. And all it took was an immortal, mythological Scandinavian troll god and all of his faithful withered followers to set the scene. If you haven't seen 2017's The Ritual, then there may be a few spoilers already lurking in this list, but as far as modern horror movies go, The Ritual sets itself apart with its wholehearted originality, but more importantly, it's a resounding formula of misdirection and confusion, because nothing says horror than uttering the phrase, "What the hell is going on and who are these creepy folks nailing people to trees?" Directed by David Bruckner with a screenplay from Joe Barton, 2017's The Ritual is a tale based on the novel of the same name written by Adam Neville. And although the movie takes a few liberties in terms of narrative structure, the visual representation of an ancient forest in northern Sweden lends itself incredibly well to the mythological mystery that it permeates. You see, it works because we don't really need to know how or why this ancient forest is populated by a bunch of Jotun worshipping fanatics. We just need to get out of said forest and survive. And that makes for some terrifying horror viewing. Coming in at number 3, Eyes Wide Shut, 1999.
May I have the password, please?
Which is perhaps the most traditional depiction of horror movie cults on this list, because there's nothing quite as visually iconic as a dimly lit room and a bunch of cultists dressed in flowing robes and porcelain masks, right? And for many people, Eyes Wide Shut is perhaps the quintessential cultish cautionary tale that very aptly spells out the fact that you should always be careful what you wish for, particularly if you're Tom Cruise. And it's also important to note that this film has caused so many conspiracy theories since its release in 1999 that it's pretty much considered to be a cult in its own right. But I'll leave that one down to your own interpretation. Written and directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick in his last ever film before his death, Eyes Wide Shut tells the tale of a curious doctor who slowly finds himself roped in with a mass secret society that has a thing or two for theatrics after discovering that him and his wife are going through a few crises of fidelity, to say the least. The thing is, there is so much to this movie that you can take the cult that comes with it in many different fashions. Depending on how you see the inner workings of the background of this movie, it may just be a bizarre tale of adultery and lust, but sometimes if you look deeper, switching the lens as we can often do with Kubrick's cinematic works, you'll see suspicion in every background actor and in every out of place frame. You'll see moments of deception, human sacrifice, ritualistic symbology. This film really is that good, and whilst the proverbial cult isn't as explicit as in other films, Eyes Wide Shut is perhaps the starkest depiction of a very human conspiracy. Swinging in at our number 2 spot, The Void, 2016. And it was only a matter of time before a Lovecraftian tentacle-worshipping sect of hooded cosmic void priests showed up, right? After all, isn't that what you came here for? Now, for the most part, 2016's The Void is an incredibly underrated horror movie, but as far as cults go, it's perhaps one of modern horror cinema's very best, and it does that with only a few handful of scenes, all of which are equally terrifying and equally awesome, may I add. If what you want from a cultist depiction of horror cinema is an ominous cabal of hooded figures holding torches on the horizon with the intention of summoning summoning forth the end of all things through tentacled deities, dark skies and vistas of black pyramid empires, then look no further, because 2016's The Void is exactly that. Written and directed by Steven Kostanski and Jeremy Gillespie, we've covered 2016's The Void quite a few times on this channel, so we won't harp on too much about its artistic merit and rightful place as one of the best horror movies of this decade. But for those of you that haven't seen it, The Void is pretty straightforward in its execution. Cosmic void cult takes over a small town. No one, including the audience, realizes that. Survivors get trapped in the local hospital, slowly getting picked apart as a metaphorical and literal box of tentacled horrors gets unleashed. If you came for cults, The Void has them in spades. Give it a watch. You won't be disappointed. And finally, coming in at our number one spot, Suspiria, 1977. And whilst technically not a cult in the conventional sense, as it's a coven of mystical and mortal witches wrapped up in a supernatural conspiracy, there's no denying that perhaps the most perfect unraveling of an occult mystery in horror cinema comes within the beautifully vivid and equally horrifying events of Dario Argento's giallo masterpiece, Suspiria. Written and directed by Dario Argento and partly based on Thomas de Quincey's 1845 essay Suspiria de Profundis, this film is a mystery wrapped up in an enigma, stacked with symbology from the off, as well as also being one of the most visually pleasing horror movies of all time. But more importantly, it defined an entire age of horror fans and warned them to always check the credentials of the establishment the next time you sign up for ballet lessons. There are so many twists and turns in this film that I feel I won't be spoiling it by telling you there's a cult somehow involved, because although part of the experience is in the slow unraveling of the events of Suspiria, from the off you know that something is up with the Tanz Dance Academy, and that's pretty much established in the film's opening moments. What sets this particular strange establishment apart though is the pure ancestry that Suspiria alludes to. How far deep is this coven rooted? How vast is its network? And for many of us, these questions only serve to permeate more questions, and it's perhaps the main reason why Dario Argento's 1977 classic is still so important to horror cinema to this day. A coven cult. Of course it's number one.